Double Master spoilers are showing us a dark future. However, there is a glimmer of hope. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. I have stumbled upon something absolutely fantastic in the Double Master spoiler. Now, you may be making a double take going, wait a minute. The title and what you said at the beginning have led me to believe that this is yet another problem with the Double Master set. Ho ho! Not so. We are here today to talk about the flavor of a particular original printing of the card that they're reprinting and also the box topper art version, because they tell two sides of an incredible dark story with an unexpected glimmer of hope and a concept I had never conceived of that from a flavor perspective could be absolutely amazing. So to understand what we're dealing with, I suppose what I should do is probably show you the first of the two cards that we're going to look at in this video. And technically it's the same card twice we're going to look at. And that is Mox Opal. All right. So this is a 0 casting cost legendary artifact with Metalcraft. And its ability is to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. However, you can activate this ability only if you control 3 or more artifacts. The flavor text says, the Sons of Mirrodin have shone upon perfection only once. So the idea behind this card is this is a legendary object that exists on the plane of Mirrodin. The fact that it requires multiple other artifacts for this to function makes perfect sense because Mirrodin is actually a world entirely made out of artifacts, okay? I'm going to encapsulate the story in very rough terms, and we will go full in depth with this story over on the lore channel when we reach that point in the storytelling arc. There's so much, literally the entire creation of Mirrodin rests on the shoulders of Karn the Silver Golem. And we are currently doing Karn the Silver Golem lore over on my other channel, but we're really early in Karn's story right now. We're talking about his creation originally, the destruction of Teleria, and this weekend, the video is actually going to be Karn's return to Teleria 10 years after the destruction. Whereas what we're going to deal with Mirrodin happens, I don't know the exact time frame, but it could be hundreds or thousands of years later, depending on how things go. Because Karn is in some ways an ageless being, which works to his detriment as well. But either way, Karn is responsible for the creation of Mirrodin. Now, unbeknownst to Karn, a little bit of Phyrexian oil that had been seeded inside of him from the point of his creation. That's as far as I understand it, when the emotion matrix was put into Karn, it was Phyrexian. Now, Urza scoured everything that was Phyrexian from it, but I believe he missed the tiniest bit, just the tiniest little scrap, the tiniest little droplet of Phyrexian oil. But that's all it takes, is replicate, divide, grow. That's how Phyrexian oil works. It's almost sentient, right? And it corrupts artifacts. Well, Mirrodin was a world where everything is artifacts. Literally everything. Not just, oh, we have some constructs. The planet itself plane itself is essentially a gigantic artifact, or multiples, depending on how you want to view it. Every single living being on the planet, on the plane, has metal infused into them. Now, they don't all technically count as artifacts from the perspective of Magic the Gathering rules. So when they made the Mirrodin set, every creature isn't an artifact creature. It doesn't function that way. But underneath it all, they may as well all be artifact creatures for the purposes of Phyrexia, because Phyrexia is all about an amalgamation of metal and flesh, right? They basically corrupt, pervert, and destroy everything into their own reflection, right? So Mirrodin was literally the perfect location for a new Phyrexia to grow from, because the original Phyrexia had been lain to waste, right? Original Phyrexia essentially got just ruined to the point where it's not really recoverable, although we'll see with what happened on Mirrodin, that's not really the truth, right? It is in some ways recoverable, at least in the fact that you can have a rebirth. So what Wizards did was they developed the world of Mirrodin, right? And then we returned to Mirrodin, where Phyrexians have taken hold. And the return to Mirrodin block, the Scars of Mirrodin block, was essentially the conversion of the world of Mirrodin from Mirren to Phyrexian, right? So its native inhabitants were overtaken by Phyrexian corruption. At a certain point, they had giant Phyrexian constructs just belching Phyrexian like oil and plague out into the rivers, oceans, and lakes. Like, everything has been despoiled by Phyrexia. And Wizards actually pulled a pretty sweet maneuver where they made us think, and it's funny that we fell for this, but they made us think that we could influence the third block in the set and decide whether it was going to be like a restored Mirrodin, like the Mirrans managed to drive off the Phyrexians and save Mirrodin, or if new Phyrexia would take over. And they even made special pre-release kits where you had, like, they were booster boxes that came with half Mirren and half Phyrexian packs. So you could pick the side you wanted to represent. They even printed special promos with the 2 different expansion symbols on it to throw us off. Now, if you know how Wizards card creation works, like with their sets and everything, by the time we were voting, the decisions had already been made at Wizards and the product was already being created. But it did give us an interesting illusion of getting to influence the future. And regardless, the conversion of Mirrodin into New Phyrexia was one of the absolute coolest storylines in Magic the Gathering. It really was. I really enjoyed that sort of like, wait, what? Like, Phyrexia's coming back? Because Phyrexia is the big bad from the beginning of Magic. If you watch the lore videos that I'm making now over on the Fantasy Geographic channel, you will see that Phyrexia is the main enemy that we will be dealing with a lot. So seeing them come back was really interesting. So the Mox Opal here is this item that exists on Mirrodin. There's only one on the entire plane. We don't know who crafted it, but I love the flavor text saying the Sons of Mirrodin have shone on perfection only once. There's 5 moons, 5 moons/suns on Mirrodin, right? And I like that whole vibe where it's like under the entire 5 Sons of Mirrodin, there's only one thing that is perfect. So you have this Mox Opal, this emblem of perfection, this emblem of Mirrodin. I really like the artwork where you have these hands that are holding it. And when you get in really close, you can see that the inner parts of the hands are still fleshy and human-like, but the outer sides are all metal, right? Even to the point where the thumbnails, like the literal thumbnails on the thumbs, are metallic as well. And it's got this kind of like blossom effect going behind it, these like curved metal coming down, just like everything you see in this artwork is very metallic, just like the world of Mirrodin. It's very emblematic of the world. So we have some unknown resident of Mirrodin. This could be the one who crafted the Mox Opal. This could be just somebody who managed to gain possession of it. But you can draw any type of mana out of it, even before the green sun like appeared in the skies of Mirrodin, because it was hidden for the longest time. Even then, you could still tap into green mana through this Mox Opal. So from the perspective of the residents of Mirrodin, green was kind of suppressed on Mirrodin because green's like the anti-artifact color. So while there were some trolls that were like green aligned and everything like that, overall green was tamped down. So this object would have felt like something that could draw on powers that were otherworldly, which would add another aspect to the amazingness of the Mox Opal. Now here's where it gets interesting, because Phyrexia corrupts Mirrodin, okay? And they turn Mirrodin into New Phyrexia. What happens to the Mox Opal? Does it get corrupted? Are Phyrexians able to exert their influence on it? Or is it so perfect that it can even resist Phyres, which is what you call the the mutations and changes created through the Phyrexian oil transmogrification, right? So can the opal survive Phyres? Is it resistant? And we get the answer to the question that I never actually asked until I saw the answer. And the answer is yes, it can resist the Phyres. And we see that with the box topper version of the Mox Opal, where they flipped the entire concept on its head. You have the Mox Opal, and it's still here being cradled in two hands the same way it was before, right? Like, there is even the possibility, theoretically, that this is the same being who has found this Mox Opal, right? It could be the being from the original artwork, just corrupted by Phyrexia so much they don't even remember their previous existence, or it could just be a random Phyrexian. That part doesn't matter, and it doesn't change how cool the artwork is and the concept is. So this artwork has a kind of noxious feel to it, right? Like, you've got this greenish yellow sick miasma. When you play video games or other things, this is used to represent either like a poison zone that you're going into, or like an area ruined by industrial waste, whatever it is. You can see the sickly, gross nature of it. And with the other Mox Opal, the hands are being framed by like these metal leaves kind of coming down. And in this one, instead, you have things like going upwards in the opposite direction. I like that. It's a nice little touch. The Phyrexian hands are obviously far more vicious and wasted. You can see there is nothing fleshy about these hands. They're perfectly metal, but at the same time, they almost have like a corroded, pockmarked feel to it. Like if you look at the left hand that's holding it, you see that like hole that's missing there. It's almost like an old rusted fence where there's like pockmarked holes in it. So it's got this kind of diseased metallic feel to it. And the further you go down to the art, the more you can see like a noxious miasma coming out, right? So the flavor text is where it really goes off the rails and becomes amazing. The flavor text says, "What crossed her mind defied orthodoxy. Could there be perfection beyond completion?" And to understand what this means, you need to know what Phyrexia is and what completion is, right? So Phyrexia are amalgams of metal and flesh. They are absolute nightmarish abominations, but the Phyrexia is like a religion with Yawgmoth at the top. Now, yes, Yawgmoth is gone. He has been destroyed, and we will definitely cover that story. It's a really long, epic story from the old days. It's amazing. But anyways, Yawgmoth has been destroyed. However, the need, desire, and like push for completion still exists within the oil and the Phyrexians. Even absent Yawgmoth, they still follow the religion of Phyrexia. And the religion of Phyrexia is, the more machine-like you are, the more artifact you are, the more complete you are. If we go to older stories with like Phyrexian newts being created, and Phyrexian newts are basically, Phyrexia will go on raids, they will collect up flesh, they will take that flesh and dump it into vats, and then they make people out of these vats for purposes that require fleshy beings. But these beings are considered the lowest of the low. They are the scum and the slaves of the entirety of Phyrexia, essentially, right? And this has a maddening effect on some of them. Some newts go crazy over the fact that they will never be completed because higher beings in Phyrexia will mock this. So you could have a Phyrexian newt that is just assigned to like raking duty, and they'll go nuts and get jam their arm into some nearby machinery so it gets cut off and cram the rake up into their arm to try and give themselves a semblance of completion. Like, that's an idea, that's to give you an idea of how ingrained and how important completion is in Phyrexia. Completion is perfection. The more complete you become, the more perfect you become. And so you have the Mox Opal, and it's literally an emblem of like uncorruptibility. It can't be corrupted. Phyrexia cannot gain a hold on this object. It cannot pervert its function. It cannot change what it is. And this object itself, when you hold it and behold it, you realize it is indeed perfection. So what we have here is something I've never seen before in my entire existence. And that is an object that can give a full-on Phyrexian a crisis of faith. We're not talking about a newt here. We're talking about a completed being where completion is perfection. And instead, this entire plane of existence has been taken by Phyrexia. Every single inch of the entire world has been taken by Phyrexia. And yet here it is, this one object, uncorruptible, that refutes the entire idea of completion and Phyrexian perfection because it's more perfect than any Phyrexian could ever be. How do you reconcile that information as a Phyrexian? This is basically would be like the first step on losing your religion. And we all know how people cling tightly to that and how damaging it is. So does this lead to somebody who goes and speaks to the priests of Phyrexia, and then they end up getting melted down and disassembled for their, no, disassemble Johnny number 5. They get taken apart for their heresy against completion and Phyrexia? Or do they keep the opal secret and use it to slowly but surely convert other Phyrexians away from Phyrexia? What does this all mean? What does this lead to? And when you tie in the fact that they're doing this right now with the Mox Opal reflected version, and the fact that in Theros, they talked about Ashiok specifically leaving to try and go find Phyrexians after learning about them through Elspeth's nightmares, it strongly points to me to us going back to Phyrexia soon, with the potential of there being other agents that are going to disrupt the order of New Phyrexia. And for me, that is fascinating from a flavor perspective. So let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Also, tell me about the best part of your day. I do love the positivity. And over on my second channel, if you like talking about lore, you like talking about flavor, you like talking about stories, that is all my other channel is about. It's purely lore. We even have a special Patreon Discord right now where we're starting to chat about lore and crack some jokes, have some fun over there. So over on the other channel, it's just straight up, let's get excited about flavor, lore, and stories. And this channel is more of like a mix of good news, bad news, whatever's going on with magic, stuff like this, where we talk flavor. I know probably most people when they clicked on this video weren't expecting what they got, but regardless of you not expecting what you got, I hope you enjoyed it. So if you like what I'm doing, comment, subscribe, like, do all the great stuff that helps with the algorithm. And if you really love what I'm doing and want to help me continue to bring awesome content out that you can be proud of, join up on my Patreon. All right? That's all I have to say for now, and I will be with you again, my friends, very soon.